Hello, hello. My name is Jess, and this is Patient POV. And today we are talking to Erika, and I am so excited for you to get to hear from her. With her, we spoke about specifically, um, she had chronic pain post injury, and so we got to talk to her about that. We also talked about tips and tricks as well as navigating the medical system, specifically after she got injured, and she was got injured on the job, and so navigating that system. So yeah, I'm really excited for you to hear from her. She's also an author, and she wrote a children's book on chronic pain, and it's about how people navigate their day differently with chronic pain. And so it is a really great book, and I'm so excited for you to hear from her. She's going to explain it, so I'm not going to jump into that, but she is an absolutely wonderful human being. And yeah, I'm super excited for you to hear from her. So that'll be just in a second. Um, just a reminder, I have created patientpov.ca, and it includes episodes from the podcast, updates, as well as resources. It has a blog and some freebies. And so if you go to patientpov.ca, please feel free to head over there, explore the site. You can also contact me through that website. And if you have any recommendations, questions, anything like that, I am so looking forward to hearing from you. And yeah, that's the housekeeping stuff. Oh, and if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's Jess underscore and underscore Elda, which is ELDA. Okay, now I think we're done with the housekeeping stuff. If you are just listening to this when it's getting released on April 14th-ish, give or take, somewhere around there. Just know that a good friend of mine, Alyssa, she has her own podcast called Chronically Fulfilled Life. And I was featured on an episode over there. So if you want to go check that out, please feel free to jump over there and show her some love as well. But yeah, I was just featured on an episode, so that's pretty cool. And I had to share that with you as well. You get to hear a little bit more of my story. And yeah, so that's the last housekeeping thing for the day. I wanted to share that I have been a little MIA on social media and whatnot. The reason for that is I am just in the middle of exams as I'm recording this intro. I had just finished an exam, so keeping going with everything. And so it is a challenge to do school, let alone have a chronic illness. And then I'm also working and doing school and have a chronic illness. And so it is a lot. And so I wanted to give you guys a tangible challenge for this week. So if you're listening to this, my challenge for you, and I'm going to try to do this as well, is to try to crank out 15 minutes every day. And by every day, I mean, you can try to do this. Like if you can get 5 days out of the entire seven, that could be a good goal. But get 15 minutes to do something for yourself without any technology. And so this is one thing is I feel like I'm doing online school, like that's how I'm doing my degree. And so I feel like I'm always staring at technology. And so, yeah, 15 minutes every day to do something for yourself. Things could include take a bath. That sounds lovely. I think I'm going to do that this evening, to be honest with you. Um, Take a bath, play games with, if you enjoy card games or board games or whatever, play a game with somebody. Um, or you can read or crochet or spend time with your dog or go for a walk if you can. Different things like that. If you need more suggestions, please feel free to DM me. But yeah, I'm so excited for you to try to implement that one challenge this week. So at least 5 out of the 7 days, 15 minutes to do something away from technology is the goal. I will also try to do it because I think that would be a really great mind break, no matter what you're doing in your day. So, with that all being said, thank you guys for all the love and support. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And yeah, thank you guys. I hope you all have a great week ahead. Hello, hello. How are you today?
I'm good, Jess. Thanks so much for having me. How are you
Of
doing?
course. Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Do you want to just jump right in and give us a little bit about who you are and kind of your health journey background?
For sure. And this is when I joke, like, do you have 3 hours?
Right.
It's like, well, what should I share and how do I share it succinctly? So I'm Erica. I like to start by just saying I'm just a regular human, right? Navigating the world, trying to figure it out. Um, and I live in Spokane, Washington in the US, and I am in the education space. I work from home because I used to be a classroom teacher. And I got hurt my first year teaching and I tripped off the curb. And that has been like the start of my journey in chronic pain and kind of wellness overall and just looking at what I need and how to manage my body. Before that, I was, forget the term, it's like um, hyper anxious, but like I had like high functioning anxiety. Like
Mm.
I didn't even know how to name it that because I had coping mechanisms and I would keep our place really clean and everything was great and I had a full schedule and whatever. But peel back the layers when you get hurt and you can't do some of those things that you're used to help yourself cope or just manage with the day to day. I learned that have to take care of my mental health in order to support my physical health and vice versa. So, in terms of kind of what I battle, I have a chronic ankle injury. So, I feel my ankle all the time, my left ankle, and it hurts all the time. It goes from anywhere from cranky to flare, and anywhere in between. Weather does like affect that, but it kind of sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. It just hurts or it's flared. And then I also have fibromyalgia. So I battle, just kind of the ongoing weakness and numb and tingling. And I have endometriosis as well. But the cool part of all of it is connecting with folks and being able to like share this community. So I don't mean to say that and like put a bow on this like pretty package, but I never would have done like my life would look totally different had I not gotten hurt, and the trajectory of what I do and how I connect with people and just empathy and all of that would be different. So there's the silver lining there a little bit.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And so you also have a website. So I was able to explore
Mhm.
it a little bit as we were chatting about that. You also wrote a book. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about
So
that?
yeah, for sure. I wrote a children's book called Adeline Plays Many Ways. It's about Adeline and her uncle Everett and how they each prepare for the day. So we start by sort of seeing the parallel versions of each of them preparing for the morning. And we don't really realize it until about three-quarters of the way through. But Everett, Adeline's uncle, has chronic pain. And I wrote this story when my nephews were asking me lots of really hard hitting, beautiful, devastating questions like, Aunt E, why don't you want to play? Or how come we could play yesterday but not today? Or why can't you go on this walk? A lot of really great questions. They're affected by this. They're affected by me. They don't know what version of Aunt E they're going to get. But I couldn't find any books out there that talked about it in terms of a story and that didn't specify specifically what was going on. So there's a lot of really great books out there talking about dementia or MS or, talking about this person has this thing and here's how we could love them through it. I wanted to just kind of invite readers into here's just the navigating the day and the experience, both for the person going through it and for the loved ones around them. In part because I had to sort of wrestle with, and speaking of unpacking the layers, be okay with I have pain and that affects me. It affects obviously like my husband who's doing life with me, but it affects everybody else in my world because who I am and what I can do and how I can participate is different depending on the moment. And so the story invites readers to ask questions and be curious. But we don't have all the answers. We don't know anything about why Everett has pain or where he's hurting, or we get context clues here or there. There's little things that pop up, And then towards the end of the book, as Adeline is getting ready for bed, she chats with her grandma about her big questions. I don't want you to be mad, but, does Uncle Everett not want to play with me? How come he didn't climb up the play structure? And just like really sweet, innocent questions that kids ask that they can hurt if you're not mindful about it affecting them. And so the story was designed around those questions and also just designed to invite people in. And then the last thing that I'll say is most people assume that Adeline is the one that, because the title is Adeline Plays Many Ways, they assume she's the one that plays many ways depending on how she's feeling. And so I like that it's kind of like this sneaky way to be like, no, no, Adeline's the main character. As far as we know, she doesn't battle anything in her body, but she is affected by her uncle who does. And so kind of a different nod to the main character and how they think about feelings and emotions. Thanks for asking.
Amazing, yeah. And so one more time, the name of the title of the book is,
Adeline Plays Many Ways.
and where can people find that book?
Yeah, thanks for asking. You can find it on Amazon. It's just
Amazing.
$13.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. You explained it so well that I think it really hooked people into it. And so I'll put the link for the Amazon on the description as well so people can access it really easily.
Thank
Um
you. Yeah,
of
it's sweet. I love to share it because folks want to see themselves in books, right? Like that's why I wrote it. So yeah, happy to share it. Thank you.
of course, yeah. And so now you talk a lot about your chronic pain. Would you say that that's one of your symptoms that are kind of the most affecting your life day to day?
Yes, totally. And it took years to accept that. I think anytime that somebody gets hurt and they have an injury that they're recovering from, there's this hopefully linear trajectory that the medical community at large puts you on. So for me, it was injury, wearing the walking boot, using crutches, going to physical therapy, easing into more daily rhythms without the boot. And all along I had pain, but it was like, well, yeah, we're just continuing on, giving your body time, etc. And so it took a long time for me to accept. And flash forward, there were a couple surgeries in there, also recovery, etc. So it took a long time for me to name I had an injury, I got hurt, I did what I needed to, I followed all the rules, right? Like, oh, I did the plan. And then I still have this thing, this big question mark. Why did my ankle not recover? Why am I experiencing this much pain? And finally getting to a point where I could accept, yeah, I have chronic pain. And so I need to finally label it as that and stop trying to get back to who I thought I was and just accept this is what it's going to be. And so now I have to look forward. That sounds really nice in a 1 minute summary. And that was years of like therapy and wrestling and being angry. And like, it was not this linear journey that felt wonderful. It felt really, really challenging to accept that.
For sure, for sure. Just jumping into things again, thank you for giving that overview. I do appreciate a good summary like that. And so when you're dealing with chronic pain on your day-to-day life, have you figured out anything that helps mitigate your symptoms, whether it's with the chronic pain or the endometriosis or fibromyalgia? Anything that you found tips and tricks kind of thing?
Yes, and it's still a spectrum. So,
Mm.
like in general, I think I know like when something's overdoing it. Unfortunately, just given the state of my ankle, any sort of bending down and grabbing something is triggering, which is frustrating because you think about like, oh, I dropped my phone. So like things like that, I can't really mitigate other than asking for help when I feel like somebody's around or when that's accessible to me. I also know when something is going to flare my foot in particular. So things like an uneven surface for like ground or a hill or extensive walking for sure. But also just making sure that I have my foot up. Like right now, I'm sitting in an office chair, but I have like an ottoman underneath. It's not elevating above my heart. It's just kind of keeping it I guess neutral, or what would that be, 180 degrees? Essentially because I used to overdo it and then some all the time. I was never caring for it because I was so angry. And so when I started kind of pulling back and realizing this is what I need, that's why I started working from home. I put my foot up often. I lie down when I need to. It's a more humble phase of life than I think I envisioned for myself, especially because I'm in my 20s. Like I kind of had this view of who I was and what I was going to do. And um, that's in some ways been stripped away and in other ways like been cared for or like really nurtured with like, oh, I'm going to really enjoy this trip, but I'm going to rent a wheelchair to make it happen. Otherwise, it's not going to be accessible to me and it's just not going to feel good. Um, Trying to think if there are other things. Also just like I mentioned earlier, like caring for my mental health. So things like, yes, it's cold outside. My ankle's going to be really cranky, but I am going to go for a little walk because if I don't, mentally, I will like regret that later. So it ebbs and flows, and it often is just like hour by hour, seeing what I need, how do I feel, and going from there.
Yeah, for sure. We talk about that a lot here is grieving the person you thought you would become. But
Mm-hmm.
then w- after you're able to grieve, because it is important, then working with yourself and not against yourself. So I think that's really awesome. And then you mentioned you are in the United States. And so, how was it navigating the healthcare system? I know a lot of people talk about chronic illnesses not being linear. You mentioned that word
Mm-hmm.
in particular, where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So, how was that experience? And yeah, we'll start with there.
Yeah. Um, the injury portion, let me just clarify in case I wasn't clear. The injury portion of my, like, I tripped off the curb and now here's the trajectory, that's supposedly linear. It wasn't for me. But it is in theory, here's the steps that you take and here's how you care for yourself. So I got a lot of like, really? It's still hurting? And for me, I'm like, that's like a stab. I am telling you and I'm showing you it's black and blue right now. It's swollen. Like, I'm like, this is not right. So I think overall, well, a lot of my journey was different than just navigating the medical community at large because the injury happened at work originally. So everything was based on following those policies. We call it workers' comp. And in some ways that was a gift and in other ways that was a huge undertaking. So the first time I pursued care, I went to urgent care and they were like, oh, you got hurt at work, and it's like an immediate ding ding ding, you have to go see a different doctor and go get cleared to work again, and everything is very specific, in part because they want to save themselves down the road from a lawsuit or like over like promising that somebody's okay, but also because people can rig the system. I got hurt at work and therefore I need like a doctor's note to continue to be off work, things like that. What was hard for me about it was everything was wrapped up into me as a teacher supporting my classroom. So it was never just, here's what you as the human need, and here's how we're going to care for you. It was, what does your class need? How long are you going to be out? When are you going to come back? They really need you. It's not going well with the sub. Okay, we're going to talk to HR and try to figure it out. A lot of really like well meaning folks that were like, we miss you and we need you. But at the time, I wasn't able to separate that from my own care. So going in and talking to my doctor about it, it would end up being like, oh yeah, I'm doing okay overall. I'm able to blah, 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 and kind of sugarcoating it because I knew if I didn't, she wouldn't let me go back to work. And then I'd get pushback from the folks that are ready to have me back. Which looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? And then I'm like, oh, you know what? That was the best I knew how to do at the time. I had no idea how to navigate a chronic injury. I had no idea. I was 22 when I first got hurt. Like I had no idea how to navigate the world of like being a human that's also an employee that then is hurt and going to like medical appointments. And some of it was fine, and a lot of it was really, really challenging. So, in terms of navigating the overall pieces, everything was kind of like work related and what's best medically, and how do those like balls kind of bounce back and forth with one another. And so, eventually, it got to a point where I had to really spell it out and advocate for myself. This isn't right. I'm in pain all day. It flares when this happens because I would basically start my day in tears because the pain was so bad, and then I go to work. And my work was such that it was very active. I'm bending down and talking to students and picking up them up from music and trying to avoid a catastrophe. And I like you talk about like 10,000 steps a day. It was that and then more. Like it was just constant movement, which was not what my foot needed. So I eventually had to get to a point where I would like put in my notes, this is what I'm gonna say. I need to spell it out. These are the three main pieces that I need them to hear. And then based on that, they're gonna make the decision. So right before the pandemic happened, I had called my doctor at lunch, which was a big deal because for me, I had like a 40-minute lunch that always turned into 30 minutes with the students and drop offs, and then 20 minutes by the time I was at the like copier. And then, so the fact that I was like calling my doctor in this like 20-minute period and like hopefully they pick up, I actually chatted with her on the phone and she was like, that's it. I'm pulling you from teaching. This, like, she was like angry with like the system, not with me, but she was like, this isn't working. Your foot is not healing. You're doing too much. I'm going to make the final call for you. And that was terrifying because the first thing I thought of was who's going to be the person that teaches my class? Because you have to have somebody come in and like a body. Like it's not just like, okay, the kids have a great day. It's like, no, no, somebody has to come in. Um, but also really relieving because I was like, you're right, I can't keep up with this. So then the pandemic happened and everything shut down. So that was kind of my saving grace in that I actually got to stay at home, put my foot up, get off my feet often, and like actually start to ice. And I would like work on my PT exercises, but I wasn't overdoing it every day.
Amazing, yeah. And so, do you have any words of either encouragement or advice to anybody who either, in your case, like got injured or are in the middle of a flare of chronic pain or just has chronic pain? Anything for them?
Oh man, it's so much easier to say it than to believe it, but continue to be brave and ask for help. It doesn't go away needing to ask for help, and it continuously like even my stomach is like, ooh, I don't like even saying that. Yeah, continue to be brave and ask for help. Find 2 to 3 people that are going to be in your corner. They can be like strangers on the internet. It could be me via DMs. Like find somebody that's going to encourage you to do the prep work and think through what you need for appointments, what you want to say, and also just give yourself tons of grace. It's so much easier to like talk the talk than to walk the walk, especially when walking is hard. And so, yeah, like you need those people. You need to ask for help, right? And you need those people that are going to support you. And it's really hard to navigate that ongoing. So, any sort of tips and tricks I feel like fall under that with the utmost grace. I like to say, like, give yourself an extra scoop of grace. You know, the classic, like cafeteria food where like somebody's like scooping the sloppy mashed potatoes and like dumping it onto the plate. Like that's how I view like a scoop of grace. It's just like an extra helping now and then.
Yeah, for sure. When you said an extra scoop, I was also thinking of that.
I love that. Most
Yeah.
people assume I mean ice cream, which is great, but I'm like, no,
Oh,
because ice cream starts off really good. I'm trying to think of like, okay, something else added to your plate where you're just giving yourself that extra like heaping.
yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you for having me and for the great conversation.